we've just looked at how to set up character to make it Human IK ready and allow you to use Human IK data and mocap files. And however, we don't have any animations to work with yet. Maya does include in the Human IK start menu some options that you can download. So you can see this option here, get HIK and mocap examples online. This allows you to download a pretty good free collection of mocap data that is more or less ready to go, but it does require a little bit of setup. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in one of those files that has been downloaded. I've already placed those on the server, and you can grab them from there. I'll also put them online on Blackboard as well, so you can grab them from Blackboard directly. But the folder is called HIK mocap samples. You could also download it yourself from that menu I just showed you as well if you wanted to. It's available again from Autodesk. So in the mocap folder within that file, there are a number of mocap files that are pretty much cleaned up, ready to go as Maya files. So I'm going to go into the mail folder, and you've got two actors here, Mick and Sean. So those are probably the names of the guys who were in the suit that day. And so right now I'm in the Sean folder, and I've got all these different files to pick from. So I'll just start with something simple, and I'll open up this jog, or actually I'll start with this walk file here. So I'll open that up. And if I play that back, well, it would help if I had a time slider. So I'll switch to animation mode for the Maya presets. There we go. And yeah, let's play that back. And you can see I've got a basic walk cycle. And not even a cycle, it's just a basic walk animation that was captured. Depending on your settings, you may have to go into the Maya animation settings here and make sure your playback speed is set to actual real time, which in this case is 24 frames per second as this file is set up. So if you've got it set to play every frame, it'll play back really fast, which is not indicative of the actual frame rate. So make sure you switch this to whatever the 1x playback rate is. Mine's already there. A little bit. So what we want to do is capture the data for this skeleton and make it Human IK compatible, which right now it isn't. Right now this is essentially the equivalent of a standardized BVH skeleton. So you can see it says BVH hips, BVH chest. That's the hierarchy that defines those joints. BVH is like the OBJ of the animation world. It's a standardized format. It's been around for years, and essentially is joint rotation data. That's it. That's all it stores. It stores a hierarchy for the skeleton and rotation data on each joint. So the beauty about that is we can capture that rotation data and use it with Human IK, but we've got to also characterize the BVH first, and there's a few steps we need to do to make that happen. And to make it essentially universal, so that if we do it the correct way, we'll only have to do this once for each character. So if we're thinking about the folder that had the two actors, Sean and Mick, we do it once for Sean, once for Mick, and then once we've got that done correctly, we should be able to bring in any data from that guy or from that actor from this same starting point. So to make this essentially Human IK ready, we've got to create a neutral version that's just in a T-pose that doesn't have any animation attached. So to do that, very easy. First, it's going to go Edit, and it doesn't matter which animation file you start with, by the way. this process, whether you started with the run, the walk, the jog, the shuffle, this part is always the same. First thing we want to do is get rid of all the animation. So we just go into Edit, delete all by type channels, and that will delete all the keyframes. So now if you hit play or drag the time slider, nothing's going to happen. With that done, if we select the character's hips, which is currently the top of the skeleton, we want to zero out the X and the Z values. We can leave Y alone because that's the height, and that's his height of his hips, so we don't want to put the hips down through the ground. So leave Y alone, but change X and Z to 0. And change the rotation X, Y, and Z to 0. And that should get him facing the camera, and but you can still see he's in his neutral, relaxed pose from the animation, so it's not symmetrical. At this point, if we right-click on the hips, choose Select Hierarchy, and then zero out the rotations again, that should put him at this BVH's neutral state. Now, it may or may not be perfect. Usually the arms will be messed up. And when I say messed up, just not in a perfect T-pose. No, again, don't worry. Just rotate them up. Usually it's going to be 90 degrees. So this arm was 90. This one is negative 90. And that should do the trick. Normally for most BVH files at this point you would have a perfectly straight arm, but for some reason this one is slightly different. Every now and then you'll run into one that has, I wouldn't even call it an issue, but that 0 doesn't necessarily equal 0 in the world. If that's the case for yours, you can just rotate it visually. So you can see about 10 degrees in the shoulders, so I'll do the same rotation for both sides. So this one's going to be negative 10 in Z. And it's going to zoom in here. So about 92 degrees for the arm. So that'll be negative 92 for the other one. And then finally the elbow looks to be about minus 12. So this one will be 12. So you can see pretty quickly, even if it's not perfect, you can adjust it more or less by eye and get it pretty darn close. We'll leave it like that for now. There's a little bend in the elbow. We'll see what happens when we add our characterization to see if it goes green or yellow like we showed in the last example. So from here, I'm going to just save this out just in case something goes wrong. And I'm going to save it in the Sean folder. And I'm going to call it Sean underscore skeleton underscore neutral. So I got my neutral pose essentially. So once you got that done, we're going to characterize just like we did before. So I'm going to go to Rigging, Skeleton, Human IK, and dock that to the side. Oops. And again, just like we did before, we're going to create a character definition. And there's absolutely no difference between these steps. So I'm going to start with the hips again. Work my way down the leg. Get my reference. This guy doesn't have twist bones, so I don't have to worry about them. Doesn't have fingers either, obviously. So I've just done that really quickly without any of the secondary bones, but they are there, so I will go in and use them. So I've got 1, 2, 3 secondary spine joints. I've got 1 shoulder joint for each side. I've got 1 neck joint, just like I had in the other file. And lastly, I've got my toe base. So I'm going to open up my toe base, plug that in, and that should do the trick. So now I'm ready to characterize this by locking it down. And again, this file at this point is characterized and ready to go. So I should go ahead and I should have done this for the other file too, but I didn't yet. But yeah, I want to rename this character to generally whoever was in the mocap suit, which based on the file naming conventions of the folder is Sean. I'm going to call that Sean. I'm going to save this out as Sean characterized. And you can see I did get the check mark, so his arms are straight enough. Didn't think to mention that earlier, but yeah, his arms, even though there's a little bend, it's not off center enough to still not be detected as being parallel. So that's good. And now I'm essentially ready for the next step, which will be bringing in animations to this. So I'll do that in a separate video.